Long before the modern nation of Iran existed, long before borders were drawn and capitals were established, a great civilization rose from the heart of the Iranian plateau. It was a land of mountains, deserts, fertile valleys, and resilient people. From this land emerged one of the most remarkable empires in human history, the Persian Empire. Around 550 BC, a leader named Cyrus the Great united the Persian tribes and laid the foundation for what would become the Achaemenid Empire. His rise was not simply the story of military conquest, it was the story of vision, unity, and wise leadership. At a time when many rulers governed through fear, Cyrus introduced a different approach, one built on respect for cultures, traditions, and beliefs. Under his leadership, Persia expanded rapidly. The empire stretched from the Indus Valley in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, from Central Asia down to Egypt. It became one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. But what made it truly extraordinary was not only its size, it was how it was governed. When Cyrus entered Babylon in 539 BC, he did not destroy the city. Instead, he honored its traditions and allowed displaced communities to return to their homelands. His policies of tolerance and religious freedom were recorded on the Cyrus Cylinder, a clay artifact that many historians regard as one of the earliest charters expressing human dignity and respect for diversity. This philosophy became a defining feature of Persian rule. Rather than forcing a single identity upon its people, the empire allowed different cultures, languages, and religions to flourish under one political system. This ability to unite diversity without erasing it would become a lasting characteristic of Iranian civilization. After Cyrus, leaders such as Darius the Great strengthened and organized the empire even further. Darius divided the vast territory into provinces known as satrapies. Each province was governed locally, but remained connected to the central authority. This balanced system ensured stability across thousands of kilometers. Darius also invested heavily in infrastructure. He ordered the construction of an extensive road network, including the famous Royal Road, which connected distant parts of the empire. Messages and goods could travel quickly and efficiently, strengthening trade and communication. Standardized weights, measures, and taxation systems brought economic stability. Persia became not only a political power, but also a center of culture and innovation. Its capitals, especially Persepolis, displayed architectural brilliance. Grand columns, detailed carvings, and monumental staircases reflected both artistic excellence and a spirit of unity. Delegations from different nations were depicted bringing gifts to the king, a powerful symbol of cooperation rather than oppression. The Persian Empire demonstrated that strength and wisdom could coexist. It showed that leadership could be firm yet respectful. Its model of governance influenced later civilizations and left a deep mark on the identity of the region. Even when the empire eventually faced conquest by Alexander the Great, the spirit of Persia did not disappear. Its administrative systems, cultural traditions, and intellectual achievements continued to shape the lands it once ruled. The foundations laid during the Achaemenid period became the roots from which future Iranian identity would grow. The values of unity, cultural pride, resilience, and respect for heritage trace back to this extraordinary beginning. The story of modern Iran, in many ways, begins here, with an empire that chose organization over chaos, tolerance over destruction, and vision over short-term power. This was the birth of Persia, and it was only the beginning. When the armies of Alexander swept across Persia in the 4th century BC, the Achaemenid Empire came to an end. Cities were taken, palaces burned, and a new era began. Yet although the political structure of the empire had fallen, the spirit of Persia did not disappear. Its culture, language, traditions, and administrative knowledge remained deeply rooted in the land and its people. After Alexander's death, his vast empire fragmented. For a time, Persian lands were ruled by the Seleucid dynasty, heirs to Alexander's generals. But foreign rule never fully replaced the identity of the region. Slowly, from the northeast, a new Iranian power began to rise. Around 247 BC, the Parthian Empire emerged. Founded by Arsaces I, the Parthians were originally a nomadic people who gradually consolidated control over large parts of the Iranian plateau. Over time, they reclaimed much of the territory that had once belonged to the Achaemenids. The Parthians became known for their military skill, especially their elite cavalry. Their mounted archers were legendary, capable of turning in the saddle and firing backward while retreating, a tactic that stunned their enemies. This technique, remembered as the Parthian shot, became a symbol of strategic brilliance. But the Parthians were not only warriors, they were careful preservers of Persian tradition. While influenced by Hellenistic culture in certain aspects, they maintained Iranian customs and governance structures. They allowed local rulers significant autonomy, continuing the long Persian tradition of balancing central authority with regional diversity. For centuries, the Parthian Empire stood as a powerful rival to Rome. Along the western frontier, two great civilizations faced each other, not in constant chaos, but in a tense balance of power. Persia remained a key bridge between East and West, facilitating trade along what would later become known as the Silk Road. Goods, ideas, and knowledge flowed through its cities. In 224 AD, another transformation occurred. A nobleman named Ardashir I defeated the last Parthian ruler and founded the Sasanian Empire. This marked the beginning of a new golden age of Persian civilization. The Sasanians viewed themselves as heirs to the ancient Achaemenid kings. They revived many earlier imperial traditions and sought to restore Persia's prestige as a unified and centralized power. Under Sasanian rule, the state became more organized and royal authority was strengthened. Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, became the official state faith. Fire temples were constructed and religious scholarship flourished. Yet even with a state religion, the empire remained home to diverse communities, including Christians, Jews, and others, reflecting the long-standing Persian ability to accommodate cultural variety. The Sasanian period was also a time of artistic and architectural brilliance. Magnificent palaces, intricate metalwork, and detailed relief carvings showcased a civilization confident in its identity. The city of Ctesiphon, with its grand arch known as the Tak Kasra, stood as a symbol of engineering mastery. Intellectually, the Sasanians fostered centers of learning that would influence the wider world. Scholars translated texts from Greek, Indian, and other traditions into Middle Persian. Knowledge in medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy flourished, creating a strong foundation for future generations. Militarily, the Sasanian Empire became one of the two superpowers of its time, alongside the Byzantine Empire. Their long rivalry shaped the political landscape of the Near East for centuries. Yet despite frequent conflicts, Persia remained stable and culturally vibrant. By the early 7th century, however, prolonged wars had weakened both the Sasanians and Byzantines. When new forces emerged from the Arabian Peninsula, the Sasanian Empire eventually fell in 651 AD. But once again, Persia did not vanish. Even after political change, the Persian language, literature, administrative experience, and cultural confidence endured. The land adapted to new religious and political realities while maintaining a deep sense of historical continuity. Through the Parthians and the Sasanians, the legacy of the ancient Achaemenids was preserved and reshaped. These centuries acted as a bridge between ancient imperial glory and the next chapter of transformation. Persia had faced conquest before. It had witnessed change before. Yet each time it carried forward its identity. Resilient, adaptive, and proud. The empire may have changed its rulers, but the soul of Persia remained strong. And in that resilience, the foundations of modern Iran continued to take shape. In the 7th century, a new force began to rise from the Arabian Peninsula. Within a few decades, it would reshape the political map of the Middle East. In 651 AD, the Sasanian Empire came to an end, and Persia entered a new chapter under Islamic rule. For many civilizations, such a transition might have meant the loss of identity. But Persia's story was different. Although political authority changed, the cultural and intellectual foundations of Persian civilization remained strong. The people of this land did not abandon their heritage. Instead, they adapted, integrated, and ultimately reshaped the new world they had entered. Islam gradually became the dominant religion across Persia. Over time, it blended with the region's deep-rooted traditions. Persian scholars, poets, scientists, and administrators began playing leading roles within the broader Islamic civilization. Rather than being absorbed, Persian culture became one of the pillars of the Islamic Golden Age. One of the most powerful symbols of this continuity was the Persian language. Though Arabic became the language of religious scholarship, Persian re-emerged as a refined, literary, and cultural language. By the 9th and 10th centuries, Persian poetry and prose flourished once again. The language evolved, incorporating Arabic vocabulary while maintaining its ancient structure and identity. Perhaps no work reflects this cultural revival more clearly than the Shahnameh, written by the great poet Ferdowsi around the year 1000. This monumental epic preserved the ancient myths, legends, and historical memories of pre-Islamic Persia. Through thousands of verses, it told the story of kings, heroes, and the enduring spirit of the land. In doing so, it ensured that the memory of ancient Persia would never fade. At the same time, Persian scholars contributed enormously to science and philosophy. Figures like Avicenna, known in Persian as Ibn Sina, advanced medicine and philosophy in ways that would influence both the Islamic world and medieval Europe. His medical texts were studied for centuries in universities far beyond Persia's borders. Mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and literature all flourished. Cities such as Nishapur, Ray, and later Isfahan became centers of learning and artistic achievement. Persian gardens, poetry, and calligraphy reflected a civilization confident in its identity, even amid political shifts. Throughout these centuries, various dynasties ruled Persian lands, including the Samanids, Buyids, Seljuks, and others. Many of them were of Turkic or mixed origin, yet they adopted Persian administrative systems and embraced Persian culture. This demonstrates the strength and influence of the Persian legacy. Even those who conquered the land often became part of its cultural world. Persia also played a central role in trade. Positioned between East and West, it remained a bridge connecting China, India, Central Asia, and the Mediterranean. The Silk Road carried not only goods but also ideas, technologies, and philosophies through Persian territories. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century brought devastation to parts of the region. Cities were damaged and populations suffered. Yet even after such destruction, Persian culture endured. The Ilkhanate rulers who eventually settled in the region adopted Persian customs and governance. Once again, the civilization absorbed change and transformed it into renewal. What makes this period remarkable is not simply survival, but transformation with dignity. Persia demonstrated an extraordinary ability to maintain its language, artistic heritage, and intellectual traditions while participating fully in a broader Islamic civilization. By the end of the medieval era, the foundations were set for a new political revival, one that would formally shape the territorial and religious identity of modern Iran. Through centuries of change, conquest, and adaptation, the Persian spirit proved resilient. It did not resist history, it shaped it. And as the world moved toward a new age, Persia stood ready once again to redefine itself. Not as a fading memory of ancient glory, but as a living civilization with deep roots and an enduring future. The transformation was profound, but the continuity was even stronger. This was not the end of Persia. It was the beginning of a new expression of its identity, one that would lead directly to the birth of Iran as we know it today. By the beginning of the 16th century, the lands of Persia had experienced centuries of transformation. Dynasties had risen and fallen, empires had conquered and withdrawn. Yet the cultural and historical memory of Persia remained alive in its language, poetry, traditions, and people. Then, in 1501, a new chapter began. A young leader named Ismail I entered the city of Tabriz and declared himself Shah. With that declaration, the Safavid dynasty was born, and with it, the foundations of modern Iran were firmly established. The Safavid rise was more than a political victory. It was a revival of Persian unity after long periods of fragmentation. For the first time in centuries, a powerful, centralized Iranian state re-emerged with clear borders, strong leadership, and a renewed sense of identity. One of the most defining decisions of the Safavid era was the establishment of Twelver Shia Islam as the official state religion. This decision profoundly shaped the religious and cultural identity of the region. Over time, it distinguished Iran from many of its neighboring powers and created a unifying spiritual framework for its people. But the Safavid achievement was not limited to religion. It was a cultural renaissance. Under rulers such as Shah Abbas I, Iran entered a golden age of architecture, trade, art, and diplomacy. The capital city of Isfahan became one of the most magnificent cities in the world. Its grand squares, elegant mosques, intricate tilework, and carefully designed gardens reflected both aesthetic beauty and engineering brilliance. Foreign travelers described Isfahan as half the world, a phrase that captured its vibrancy and importance. Trade routes flourished once again, linking Iran to Europe, India, Central Asia, and the Ottoman lands. Silk, carpets, ceramics, and metalwork from Safavid Iran became highly prized across continents. Persian art reached extraordinary heights during this period. Miniature paintings, calligraphy, poetry, and architecture reflected a deep sense of harmony and sophistication. The Persian language continued to thrive as a symbol of cultural pride and intellectual achievement. Politically, the Safavids strengthened central authority and organized military forces to defend the state. They balanced diplomacy and strength, maintaining relations with European powers while securing their regional influence. More importantly, the Safavid era solidified the concept of Iran as a defined political entity. While the name Iran had ancient roots, during this period it became firmly connected to a specific territory, identity, and state structure that closely resembles the foundations of modern Iran. The Safavid period demonstrated once again the enduring pattern of Persian history: resilience followed by renewal. After centuries of change, the civilization did not fade. It reasserted itself with confidence and creativity. When the Safavid dynasty eventually declined in the 18th century, the identity it had shaped did not disappear. The territorial idea of Iran, the prominence of the Persian language, and the cultural and religious framework it established remained deeply rooted. Through revival and reform, the Safavids bridged the medieval world and the early modern era. They transformed a land shaped by ancient empires and Islamic scholarship into a unified nation with a strong sense of itself. In many ways, the Safavid chapter represents the moment when Persia fully transitioned into Iran, not by abandoning its past, but by building upon it. The empire of Cyrus had planted the seed of unity. The Parthians and Sasanians preserved the flame of identity. The Islamic era refined and expanded its cultural influence. And now, under the Safavids, that long historical journey crystallized into a nation. The story was no longer only about an ancient empire. It was about a living homeland, Iran. Empires rise, empires fall. But some civilizations leave behind something deeper than monuments or borders. They leave behind identity. As the centuries moved forward, dynasties changed and the modern era arrived. The Qajar rulers governed Iran during a time of global transformation. Later, in the 20th century, the Pahlavi era introduced modernization, new infrastructure, and a renewed emphasis on Iran's ancient heritage. Railways, universities, industries, and new institutions reshaped the country. Yet beneath these political changes, something much older remained constant. The legacy of the Persian Empire continued to shape the spirit of Iran. The Persian language, Farsi, remains one of the strongest symbols of continuity. Spoken for over 1,000 years in evolving forms, It connects modern Iranians directly to poets, scholars, and kings of the past. When verses from Ferdowsi, Hafez, or Sa'di are recited today, they echo centuries of cultural memory. Nowruz, the Persian New Year, is still celebrated every spring. Its origins stretch back to ancient Zoroastrian traditions, long before Islam reached the region. Families gather, homes are decorated, and symbolic items are placed on the half-seen table. This celebration reflects a continuity that links modern Iran to its ancient roots, a reminder that time changes governments, but culture endures. Architecture also carries the mark of the past. From ancient Persepolis to Safavid Isfahan and into modern Tehran, there is a visible thread of artistic balance, geometric beauty, and symbolic meaning. The Persian garden, designed to reflect harmony between humanity and nature, remains an enduring image of Iranian aesthetics. Even the concept of governance in Iran has deep historical echoes. The Achaemenid system of provinces, the emphasis on administration, the value placed on unity within diversity, these principles shaped the region's political development across centuries. Modern Iran is a country of complexity, history, scholarship, and pride. It stands at a crossroads between ancient civilization and contemporary reality. While the world may often focus on modern headlines, the deeper story of Iran stretches back more than 2,500 years. The Persian Empire was not only about conquest or territory, it was about organization, respect for cultures, infrastructure, communication, and vision. It demonstrated that strength could coexist with wisdom, that diversity could exist within unity. Through the Parthians and Sasanians, that imperial spirit survived foreign invasion. Through the Islamic Golden Age, it transformed into intellectual brilliance. Through the Safavids, it became a unified nation. And through the modern era, it continues to live in language, art, tradition, and national consciousness. Today, when people speak of Iran, they are speaking of a land that has carried its identity across millennia. A civilization that adapted without disappearing. A culture that endured without losing its roots. The ruins of Persepolis still stand beneath the open sky. They are silent, yet they tell a story of vision, unity, and resilience. The Persian Empire shaped governance, it shaped culture, it shaped identity, and in many ways, it shaped modern Iran. From Cyrus the Great to the present day, the thread of history remains unbroken, woven through poetry, architecture, celebration, scholarship, and pride. This is not just the story of an empire, it is the story of continuity. It is the story of Iran.